Looks like Judge Merchan is not backing down to Trump's incessant attempts to get his 34 guilty convictions overturned or just thrown out altogether.
The judge has made as clear as possible in the ruling that he issued on Friday night that A, he intends to sentence Donald Trump to what we call an unconditional discharge, meaning no prison time, no probation, no fine, no community service, no nothing. And B, that in order to accommodate Donald Trump's status as president-elect, he's willing to hold the proceeding by Zoom, which is very unusual. So yeah, that's all that's at stake with his sentencing coming up on Friday. But as you know, Pam, that would make the conviction formal. A document, a piece of paper called a judgment of conviction would issue upon sentencing, so that would formalize Donald Trump's status as a convicted felon.
He's trying to use the Supreme Court's asinine decision that presidents are somehow immune in order to get his hush money convictions essentially thrown out. Or as they say in the biz, the Nixon defense.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly.
So what more are we hearing from Trump's lawyers? What's their argument? Their argument, Anna, is because the Supreme Court's presidential immunity decision over the summer says that a president or a former president is entitled to resolve their entitlement to immunity before a trial. By necessity, given that the trial has already happened here, he must be entitled to a stay of sentencing now. In other words, if the Supreme Court is willing to say you have to resolve whether someone is entitled to immunity before trial, doesn't that necessarily mean that if the case has already progressed beyond trial and to a point where he could be sentenced, that it would also be unlawful to progress to sentencing before resolving immunity? And of course, the immunity argument here is a little bit of a different one. He's arguing that as a president-elect, that transition period is so vital and integral to his service as the future president that the immunity that the court bestowed upon him should also extend to this period right here, right now.
But Judge Juan Merchan said not today. Trump threw an absolute hissy fit, and he hasn't stopped. He went on a 2-day tirade on his Truth Social, kicking his little feet and punching the air, whining about witch hunt this and treason that. I swear Trump whines more than Napa Valley. There has never been a president who was so evilly and illegally treated as I. Corrupt Democratic judges, prosecutors have gone against a political opponent of a president, me, at levels of injustice never seen before. God, does this guy never stop crying? It's 7 a.m. At least get some coffee first before you start your temper tantrum.
It seems like the judge would have to move very quickly to answer this, no? Given sentencing is on Friday. And that's why in the filing where they have asked Judge Juan Merchan to grant them this stay, they essentially impose a deadline on him saying, if you don't act by 2 p.m. tomorrow, we will take additional steps. So we should be prepared to see if there is no answer from Judge Merchan by 2 p.m. today, the Trump folks may indeed go to an appeals court in New York State and ask for the same relief, a stay of the sentencing to prevent it from taking place this Friday.
Well, Judge Juan Merchan did answer, and he answered with a big fat you. Despite his little tirade, the judge says no way and denied his attempt to halt the sentencing on Friday. Here's Judge Merchan's response as the people of the state of New York against Donald Trump. And I wanted to go over a couple of things that don't bode too well for Donald Trump. In this first section, Donald Trump essentially argues that him seeking appeals should automatically stay the proceedings. He says, defendant claims that commencement of the appellate proceedings, quote, immediately results in an automatic stay of proceedings in this court. And even if the filing does not automatically stay these proceedings, the court should grant an immediate stay of all pending proceedings, including the sentencing. In this next paragraph, the judge says no. You seeking appeals does not automatically stay proceedings. Not only that, it is the people's position that the defendant is unlikely to prevail on the merits of any interlocutory appeals. He basically said, try it, big boy. I don't think it's going to work. The judge says that Trump is basically saying the same thing over and over again, which he had already thrown down as bad arguments. And so for that reason, denied. That's a word Trump is used to hearing in the bedroom with Melania. If you're liking the content, make sure to like the video and double check that you're subscribed. And boy, does Trump and all of his lackeys like Alan Dershowitz love to complain.
I doubt that Donald Trump will bite, and he shouldn't bite, Jason. He was found guilty by a biased jury of crimes that don't even exist under the law. He was all but framed by a politically driven DA who worked in concert with a hostile judge who was required to recuse himself but refused to do it. So this turned out to be a sham trial based on a convoluted, incoherent legal theory. As you point out, it was utterly absurd. It was rife with reversible errors by the judge, and it will eventually get overturned. But for now, I expect Trump to fight any sentencing. He wants to clear his name. He'll probably seek a stay in the appellate court, so we'll see what happens.
And Alvin Bragg, the Democratic DA, tried to find a crime to convict Trump of, but they couldn't. They couldn't find a crime. They searched the books. They couldn't find a crime, so they made one up out of whole cloth. A totally made-up case. And if they can make up a case against Donald Trump, they can make it up against you, too. And now they're trying to avoid him getting an appeal. One way of avoiding getting an appeal was not sentencing him. Okay, now they're going to sentence him. There's another possibility. The governor may pardon him. And if the governor pardons him, then he still has the stigma of a conviction. And there's a question about whether he can appeal if he's been pardoned. They're looking at every possible way of avoiding an appellate reversal because any decent appellate court will reverse this conviction for a dozen different reasons. One, there was no crime. Two, there was immunity. 3, era after era after era. 4, recusal and disqualification. The worst criminal case in my memory. The worst.
Just all twisted up and angry, like a little garden gnome who's lost his hat. And I love the argument that they just made up these crimes, like the law doesn't even exist, and they just like made up a crime for him to get convicted of. That's a ridiculous claim that clearly makes no sense. Anybody can just look up the crimes that Trump was convicted of. Actually, you know what? I'll do it for you, Alan Dershowitz. Business records, falsifying business records, falsifying business records. I'm starting to think that maybe he falsified some business records. These guys love committing fraud so much, it seems like they forgot it's a crime.
If Judge Merchan says to Donald Trump's new request today, sorry, denied, we are moving forward with this sentencing as scheduled on Friday, then look for Donald Trump's team to take it to the next level. I think they're going to go to the appeals court and saying, okay, appeals court, you have to now put on pause everything happening with Judge Merchan, because again, I'm entitled to have everything stayed, everything put on hold while I appeal the immunity decision. So we're going to see a back and forth happening between Donald Trump and the DA and Judge Merchan and maybe the New York appeals courts starting hours from now, and I think continuing right up until the moment of sentencing on Friday, if the sentencing does in fact go off as planned.
So it looks like they're going to try to fight with an appeal. But hopefully, seeing as Trump was rightly judged by a jury of his peers, which is like, you know, the whole justice thing, and found guilty on 34 charges, in a case in which his own lawyer's already gone to prison, well, let's just hope justice continues to prevail. I tip my hat to John Juan Merchan, and I hope he keeps it up. Seeing the speed and intensity in which Trump soils his diaper over this situation is just too good. Luckily, Judge Merchan seems pretty confident that things are not going to shake out the way Trump wants them to. Let's just hope that he's right. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American. I'll catch you next time.